Well, good morning, everyone. How we doing? Great. How's the volume on this? Is it okay? All right, super. Well, we're thrilled you're here. I always like to say that it's wonderful having your feet under our table this morning. And what a wonderful morning it is. This is TU's 35th year of celebrating Good Morning World. This breakfast lecture series began in 1983. And as we begin, we always like to recognize those folks that are so important to this institution and our community, and a few folks in the room that I'd like to give a special welcome to. Our trustees, Dr. Claire Johansson, Lenny Klaus, and Andy Felter. So thank you for being here. John Detweiler from the Chamber is here. John, thanks for being here 2 days in a row. And then our own state representative, Bill Reineke, is here as well. I'd like to thank those businesses and entities that are sponsors of the Elite Sports and Culture Week. They're here listed on the sign. You can see Mercy Hospital, Mercy Health, National Machinery, Terra Community College, and of course Tiffin University. So thank you to all of you, and then thank you to this morning's sponsor, Good Morning World sponsor, Old Fort Bank. So yeah, thank you all. One last big thank you before I introduce our moderator, and that is to Dr. Bonnie Teal. So we had really, and will continue to have yet today, a really unique opportunity to where Tiffin once again gets to welcome, not to steal Joe's thunder over there, but welcomes the world, right? And in a different way than maybe we ordinarily have seen in the past. And so, Bonnie, to you and to all the volunteers that you put together and to all the sponsors that made this happen, thank you and great job. Congratulations. So it's a pleasure to introduce today's topic, that being the Olympic Games, past and future. And we'll obviously feature a panel of athletes from the Olympic and Paralympics. It'll be moderated by Toledo native Dr. Matthew Mitten, a leading sports law scholar. Serving on the ad hoc division for the 2014 Olympic Games in Sochi, Dr. Mitten was a member of the Court of Arbitration for Sport and on arbitration and/or anti-doping panels for the LPGA and UFC. Two very different groups of athletes, for sure. Yeah. He currently is a professor of law and executive director at the National Sports Law Institute at Marquette University. Please give Dr. Mitten a very warm TU welcome.
Well, actually, it's a pleasure to be back home. I grew up in Toledo, but I was actually born in Tiffin, if you can believe that. It is ironic. It is. So, a lot of happy memories. Lived in Jefferson Street for a while, right behind Marvin's, which isn't there anymore, nor is the house that I lived in. Miami Street looks really familiar because my paternal grandmother lived there for a number of years. And then I actually recall when Tiffin University was, I think, one building back in the early 1960s when there was a bridge as opposed to an overpass. My other set of grandparents lived on Braden Court. So it's really great to be back home and to kind of borrow from the Olympic movement. I would say my impressions of Tiffin in both Tiffin University, Citius, Altius, Fortius, which is faster, higher, and stronger, no doubt. There's been great progression. And as someone who puts together annual conferences, Bonnie has done just a tremendous job to get all of these Olympians, Paralympians from throughout the world. It's just outstanding. So it's a pleasure to be here. Let's start. One of the things that's tradition is the torch run before the Olympics. We're going to use a microphone. We get another one up here. We've got two. And let me start by asking everyone to introduce themselves, indicate what sport or sports they participated in, as well as for which country?
Good evening, good morning, everyone. You can tell that I'm still trying to wake up from the time zone. My name is Dr. Francis Dove Edwin, and I ran in the 1988 Olympics in the 100 meter, and in 1992 I ran in the Olympics in the 200 meter. I'm from Sierra Leone, West Africa.
I've been talking too much. My name is John Konkak. I played the 1984 Olympics. We won the gold medal in table tennis, men's basketball. But this is a great group of people, and I'm happy to be here. We've had a wonderful time. You guys have been really, really nice hosts, and look forward to coming back sometime.
I am William Wyken. I'm from Venezuela. Went to the 1980 and 1984 Olympic Games, and I'm very happy to be here in Tiffin. My first time here, and I've been enjoying, being here. Thank you.
Gary Morgan, track and field, 20K race walk, and I'm from that place up north of Detroit, Michigan, and it's been great being here. I was 1988 Olympian in Seoul, Korea, and it's great to be back. Bonnie's had me down here for a couple times talking about the Olympics, and last month she invited me to be Grand Marshal of the Heritage Festival, and I truly am impressed by Tiffin and Tiffin University. This community has become as one with the university, a lot of unique things. I'm really impressed being here, and I want to thank all of you for having us.
Good morning. Liston Bochette. I grew up in Puerto Rico. It's an interesting story because we got caught in the boycott in that year, and I had two Olympic committees, and one went and one didn't, so I stayed in the one that did, which took me to 5 Olympic Games. Started in Los Angeles in track and field, and where track and field guys allowed us to end up is over in the winter sports pushing bobsleds. So that took me to 4 more, 92, 94, 98, and finally retired in 2002. So thank you.
Dean Greenaway, British Virgin Islands. I have the unique privilege of being to the 4 Olympic Games, but in 3 different capacities. First as an athlete running the 400 meters in Los Angeles, 1984. In 2004, I was the chef de mission of the British Virgin Islands team, and in 1984, actually, I was on the first team to ever represent the British Virgin Islands in the Olympic Games. And then in Beijing 2008 and London 2012, I was the Secretary General of the Olympic Committee.
Hello, good morning. My name is Sebastian Keitel. I am from Chile. I qualified for 3 Olympic Games, but I compete just in 1 in Atlanta 96. It's a long story, but I'm very proud to be here. Thanks to everyone just for enjoying us.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Higgins. I just realized I'm the only woman up here. So, yay for the month of women. All right, so fencing 1984, and I kind of am a wannabe track and field athlete since everyone up here except John is, track and field, and I've got my fencer to the left. But I usually say that the sport that I competed in was basketball. So you see, anyway, thank you for having us. We've really enjoyed ourselves here at Tiffin.
My name is Jan Boekmie. What a privilege to be here. It is really, for me, an outstanding trip that I'm making all the way from Curacao. I've been fencing in 64 and 68. In Tokyo and in Mexico for the Olympic Games. Besides that, I have been to numbers of other activities like the Olympians Association, but also working for the organizing committee in Atlanta, and once even in Barcelona as a person invited for the Games.
My name is Dave Clark. I was involved with the Team USA baseball staff in the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, not the Paralympics. Olympics, but the regular Olympics. I have what's called post-polio right now, which makes it a little bit difficult for me to get around. Can't get around like I used to. But my background is in baseball, even though I had polio as a youth. I went on to play 17 years of professional baseball on crutches. So I had the unique opportunity to work with Skip Bertman and his baseball staff at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. And I'm from Florida, so it's cold up here. I've enjoyed my time, but I'm freezing. Thank you.
Well, one of the things I enjoyed most, I was one of the 9 arbitrators at the 2014 Olympics in Sochi, just an incredible experience, and also attended the 1996 Summer Games in Atlanta. I started my career practicing law there. But I want to ask the Olympians and Paralympians, what are some of your favorite memories of participating in Olympic Games? I mean, just what an incredible event. We have people from all over the world coming together. So what sort of things stick out in your mind even today?
Since I have the microphone, I guess I better begin because everyone is looking at me. It's good to be in Tiffin, even though it's 74 degrees in the Virgin Islands right now. I think one of the memories I've had from the Olympic Games has been the friendships I've made and a lot of the people I've seen, because guys like Liston, who was around in '84, we have been friends for the longest time. But from the competition point of view, I think the British Virgin Islands at the time, in our first Olympic Games, we had 2 sports, sailing and track and field. And our population was just around 12,000. And our 4x4 relay beat the French team at that time. And the national record lasted until 2016. So we are very proud. To me, that stands out as one of the memories from the Olympic Games, besides all the friendships I've developed over the years.
Why don't we pass the microphone that way, then we can kind of come back.
Well, for me, it was very nice to, on that time in 1996, the president of Chile chose me to carry the flag in the open ceremony. I feel very proud of that. Every Olympic Games, Chile have a very small team, and they only qualified no more than 15 or 20 people. For me, it was a very nice experience on the track. I forgot to tell you before in the presentation, but I competed in the 200 meters on the track. It wasn't a good experience because I got injury 3 months before the Olympic Games. I qualified. I was very proud to be competing there, but just I ran the series and I didn't qualify for the second round. But I told you before, I qualified for the next Olympic Games. I had a problem in my Achilles tendon. I recovered, qualified for my 3rd Olympic Games, and I have the problem in the other Achilles tendon. But don't cry. You must be happy, don't worry. Okay, but I'm happy to be here.
I think the friendships is really number one. I still have friends from 1984 that I met in the village. And you get to meet people from all over the world. And really what stood out to me is that everyone respected each other because we're all athletes. We knew what it took to get there. And no matter what country you were from, you had a relationship beyond just what country you're from. Closing ceremonies, I was fortunate enough to carry the flag for my country, Panama. And, I had the big, Great Britain, Sebastian Coe come up and help me get the flag out of the stadium that I could not get out. It was like stuck. And we're like, oh my gosh, Panama's not going to have a flag in the closing ceremony. And, that's the kind of camaraderie you get. It doesn't matter where you're from. You get help from everyone.
Let me start telling you how much work it is to have the Olympic Games. I had the pleasure to be at 10 of them. During those games, you see at the opening itself how many millions and millions of people are watching. But the other thing that you see, that during the Olympic Games, you get people getting together and going to be friends from any other country in the world. That is one of the most important things for us as here in the United States. We are together. And that is what I thought is one of the most important things. On the other side, I happened to be in 72, and we had the problem what happened there. That can happen too. How much is to be done to do something that the people will not be able to do this? Because we had it, every country now is looking at what can we do for our people to be safe in a place to go. And we have been, I've been for the Netherlands, I finished there. I've been in the Netherlands itself. I was as a visitor there. But the people in the world are not all the same. We have to say we have problems sufficient all over the world. But we, as Olympians, are trying to be a role model to assist other people to become a better world in this year in the Olympic Games and all over the sport world.
I feel like a rookie here next to Jan. I'm only involved in one Olympics. But some of the lasting memories that I have from the Atlanta Olympics, number one is Muhammad Ali coming on to light the torch with his shaking hands when nobody knew who was going to light the torch. It was a surprise. That's one of the memories that endure with me. The other is just getting the privilege, a little guy like me that grew up with polio and crutches and leg braces from Corning, New York, a little town that's smaller even than Tiffin, be able to be involved with all these great athletes and work with guys like Chris Benson, who became the number one draft pick of the Pittsburgh Pirates that year. Was truly an honor. And one of the things that I always say when I'm speaking is, if everybody could only do one kind thing a day for somebody else, it'd be a hell of a lot better world to live in if we all just did one kind act a day for someone else. Don't even have to know them. And that's what the Olympics personifies, is that spirit of kindness and helping out. Even just right here, them handing me the mic. You know, other places, I'd be struggling to get up there to get the mic. That kind of thing, that kind of personifies what the Olympics are about. It was a great memory and a great thing for me to be involved in.
I guess it's my turn. Actually, you have to look at it from my point of view and how old I was at that time. I was a youth and I was a teenager. So arriving at the Olympics, the greatest memory for me, you know, it was like a Noah's Ark. You know, it was everybody else. It was everything that I've read of people were actually in this village. So, you know, I was mesmerized. I was like, I woke up every day with my camera and I would go to every country and take a picture. So up till today, I have like faces of people. Because that was the only time I'm going to see all the human beings in the world, as far as all the islands, as far as Haiti. You can just think what a Japanese look like, what an African American, what an American look like, what face person looks like coming from Brazil. So I have that collection of as many faces as I could get from the Olympic on that day. So that for me was a Noah's Ark, and it left an impression. That's the personal one. On the field, actually my favorite sport that I love to watch, funny enough for track athletes, is diving. And my favorite diver at that time was Greg Louganis. And you could imagine I was almost in tears when Greg came out and then he hit his head on that podium. I thought he was going to die. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then to see him come back an hour later, and you had all these experts who were talking about, oh, what would happen? There's a little bit of water and there's a little bit of blood in the water, and then the media just keep repeating this guy in slow motion, banging his head now 2-3 times. So it was terrifying for me, but then he gave me that joy that against all odds, he still fought to come back, and he did that pike, and he won the gold medal. So those were the lasting memory, even up till today, that I have from the Olympic Games.
I guess we have enough time for me to tell a story here. I played on a team sport. Most of my colleagues up here, even though if they ran relays, most of the time they trained as an individual, but basketball obviously is a team sport. And in my year, they invited 70 of the best college players to actually try out to make the team. We had players, Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, Wayne Tisdale, Chris Mullen, the kids that I watched on TV while I was actually playing in college. So anyway, I was fortunate enough to go through those processes and make the team. But I think a story you'll really enjoy, being that we're in this part of the country, is our coach was Bobby Knight, who's son of Ohio. And I'd like to tell you this story about Bobby Knight. So my junior year of college is when the Olympic trials were after my junior year. And I was just hoping to get an invitation to the trials, that I would be recognized as one of the top 70 players. And the woman I had been dating at the time for about 2 years, we were engaged to be married in the summer of 1984. June 22nd actually was the date that we had printed on the invitations and mailed out in early May. But the second week of May, I made the Olympic team, and we had to start training on the 3rd of June. So, we had a decision to make. And obviously we wanted to get married, and she was the love of my life. And so we called the church, we called the caterer, it wasn't going to be a big fancy wedding, but everyone could move everything up to Friday, June the 1st. So we were going to get married on Friday, and on Sunday night I would fly to Bloomington and start our training for the 2.5 or 3 months leading up to the Olympic Games. So the week of the wedding, on Wednesday, I get a call from my college coach. And he said, John, how's it going? I said, great. I said, training's going great. I'm going to be up there this weekend. And he said, well, Bobby Knight wants to meet you on Thursday. Can you meet him at the airport? And I'm like, well, what time's he flying in? He said, 6:15. I go in the morning or at night? He said, no, at night. I said, no, my rehearsal dinner is at 7 p.m. Okay. So I don't know if any of you have been to the Kansas City airport, but it's 45 minutes north of town. I lived on the south side of town. So right away, I knew I wasn't going to make it at 7. So I'm dressed kind of like this with a tie, and I go down there. And this is obviously before all the security issues at the airports now, so you could actually meet the people at the gate when they got off the plane. So I'm sitting there looking at my watch, and the plane's probably on time, so at 6:15 or 6:20, he walks off the plane. I assumed we were going to sit down there in the seating area to talk whatever we wanted to talk about. He said, I'm kind of hungry. Do you mind if we go across the street and get something to eat? I looked at my watch again. I said, sure. So we jumped in the cab, went across the street. There's a Marriott hotel there. Walked in, sat down at the restaurant. It's probably 6:30 now. He said, you want anything to eat? And I said, no, I'm okay. And he said, well, I'd like a bowl of French onion soup. And I don't know if you've ever ordered French onion soup, but it takes a while to come out. It's not like getting a club sandwich. So we're sitting there kind of doing chit-chat, small talk, and maybe 5 to 7, the soup comes out, and he takes two little sips of it. He said, John, there's something I want to talk to you about. I said, okay, Coach, what's on your mind? He said, I talked with the coaches, and I've talked with the USOC basketball, and we really feel that it's in our best interest and your best interest and the country's best interest if you postpone your wedding until after the Olympics. Well, it's about 7:05 now. You know, you have to remember, I was only 21 at the time, and you know, I just didn't know if I heard what he said right. You know, because I assumed maybe he was flying in to congratulate me or something like that. So anyway, I look at him and I said, Coach, I said, there's nothing more that I want to do in my life than represent the United States in Los Angeles and win the gold medal. But I'm getting married tomorrow. And he said, okay, you can drop me off at the airport. Have a good time. So I ran him back to the airport, got on the plane, flew home. I went to the rehearsal dinner, got married the next day. Went up there on Sunday, and 3 months later won the gold medal.
But one of the great memories that I have, and you have to echo some of you guys, is I was the flag bearer for the Olympic, from 1984 Olympic game. I had that great honor to carry the flag. And second, I think, was the friendship. You know, see John, 1984, and some of you guys, it's still, you know, this friendship that is still, when we keep talking about, and it's great, you know, just to be with all my friends, and it's a great family. That's one of the great memories that I have of the Olympic Games.
My number one memory of the Olympics is just before the opening ceremonies. We're out in an open field outside the stadium. It's in Seoul, Korea, and for a couple hours we had to go early, like everything. And we're out there trading pins with athletes from around the world, taking pictures, and that was a totally memorable time. You know, in many of the countries, people wore, you know, whatever their nation they were from, kind of what their ethnic was, whatever. And so it was really cool to see all that and take pictures and trade pins with people. It was definitely an exciting time. And then to walk into the stadium and to be there, and then, you know, the ceremony went on, and at the end, F-16 fighters flew over the stadium and let off colored smoke, and then the president of the Olympic Committee goes, let the games begin. I finally knew that I'd made it for, you know, a lifelong or 10-year journey to make the Olympic team, when truthfully nobody thought I'd ever make it. I just barely made the track team in high school, but I just kept on working with the local community college, worked every day, trained every day after work. My parents never thought I'd make it, and my dad ended up coming to the Olympics because at that time sequence brought in, could you bring in one family member or best friend to the Olympics. So my dad picked my dad to come and came, and for him to be in Korea, it was 40 years after World War II. He was a fighter pilot off the aircraft carriers in the Pacific, and even though it wasn't war obviously with Korea, but for him to go to Asia 40 years after the war, you know, I'm sure he couldn't believe it. He saw me do my race walk and everything. And of course, my parents never thought I'd make it. So for him to be there and to do all that, it was really exciting. And I still, you know, I ended up going back to Korea again and volunteered at the Olympics for the Winter Olympics we just had in February. And to be there 30 years after the games and see how much Korea had changed in 30 years. But the most exciting thing that happened at the Olympics, above all else, was to see both North and South Korea be as one team. That truly was amazing to see all the rhetoric and everything that was going on before the games, and somehow the power of sport and the IOC got both Koreas together just a couple of weeks before the games, and they marched in together. That truly was amazing. And whenever the North Korean team was around different venues, people wanted to take pictures with them and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. So yeah, I have some very fond memories of being in Korea these both times.
Thanks, Gary. We're looking for that moment, that memory, but I have to say you can't pin it to one time, because it's the sensation we all get in that silent second when you walk in the stadium. That silent second when they hand you your national flag to carry. That silent second when the gun's about to go off, and you're totally void of emotion. It's just blankness. And it may be the same thing when your children are born. or you see a friend you haven't seen in 20 years. Those are the things that rivet it all together. It's that inexplicable, surreal Hollywood moment that defies definition. And that's a memory in itself, although you can't pin it down. So.
Thank you for those, sharing those memories with us. Probably have time for one final question before we open it up to the audience. But there's no question that sports, particularly at the Olympic and international level, is a microcosm of society. It reflects both the best, predominantly so, but some of the worst of human behavior. We have great triumphs on the athletic field to Olympics have become rather politicized. There's those who don't want to comply with the rules. Doping is an example. I mean, the essence of sports is to have fair competition. Everyone plays by the same rules. We've had some unfortunate, states, national involvement in it. But let's assume that each of you is the next IOC president, and you have 1 minute to explain what is number one on your agenda in terms of reform or change that you'd like to see. So whoever's got the microphone.
Well, in reverse ordering, having served as Secretary General for all the Olympians and on the IOC Athletes Commission, on the Executive Committee briefly, I'd say let's take care of the athletes, because you walk in the stadium, everybody loves you. But when you walk out of that stadium, it's a cold reality. People forget very quickly. There's no health insurance. There's no educational benefits. You walk out, have given 10, 15 years of your life to something you did, and there's no return on it. So what I would do is say, take care of the players, because they built these games. They deserve to be rewarded and be part of it forever.
I think it's along the same lines. I think the education of athletes pre and post, because I find many athletes have a lot of goals to get to the Olympic Games, but then they don't have the plans after the Olympic Games where it really matters. And I think the same goals that were developed in getting there should be a post plan. So I think post-competition education, because not everyone sees the importance of the afterlife. And I've read stories of athletes who have become very depressed after the Olympic Games because there was no plan for what happens after. And I think that is one of the most important things that the Olympic movement can do for the development of the athletes who have put on such a good show at that particular Olympic game.
Well, I don't know if I understand the question. My English is not good enough, but I think it's very good in South America. The sport is not too much, and maybe South America, Africa need the support to the coin, the COI, and it's important to find the talent, help them, give them all the opportunities. And like a dean, I think that after to get retired, it's important to help the athletes. In Chile, we compete for our country. I compete for 17 years, and then when I got retired, I didn't have the university studies, I didn't have any money, I didn't have nothing. And I tried to do my life just by myself, and at that time it's very important the government, the support from them, and for the support from all the authorities relation with the sport and the people.
Very good for that understanding. It's interesting you asked the question because you're talking about your athletes. So you're going to get the athlete's perspective. And I was walking at the USOC one time, walking down the hall. And it's really an attitude that we would like to change. Because here I was walking down the hall, and they didn't know I was an athlete. And these people in front of me were talking about the USOC, and they said, "This is a great organization. You know that? If it weren't for those damn athletes." I was like, really? But that summed it up right there. And it's, you're like a burden. It's like, oh, we got to pay attention to the athletes. Here we go. And I think that, you know, professional sports in the United States have done a great job of making the athlete valuable and explaining and really making it so that the money that's spent is spent on those that are really the attraction. And I can tell you, I don't have enough hands, we don't have enough hands here, up here on stage, to count how many athletes I know that are destitute. These are gold medalists, whether they're medalists or not, they have participated and they don't have anything. They don't have healthcare, they don't have dental. Just now they're starting to get some help for these athletes. But you know, it's a travesty when you have someone who has helped. Jim Hines, for example, 1968 gold medalist, broke the first man to break the 10-second in track and field, the 100-meter. And, you know, he's living from hand to mouth, and that's unacceptable in the United States and in the world for Olympians. So if I had one thing to change, I would absolutely put together a foundation that would help the Olympians of past games. That 100%, that would be my biggest goal.
We had a situation for the Netherlands in swimming. Edith Brigitta is her name. She became twice third. Later on, we all could hear that the two East Germany girls had used drugs. It was officially said and officially announced, and we expected that Edith Brigitta would go back to be number one. In 2003, I spoke to the president of IOC, and I asked him, what can you do? Because I'm here, she is in my board in Curaçao. And to my astonishment, he said, it's over here. And this was for the Netherlands very, very bad and sad.
First off, let me tell you, I wouldn't want to be the president ever. That said, if I was, I agree that there needs to be some kind of a plan in place. I was a Major League Baseball scout for several teams for several years, and kind of the same thing happens there. You're chasing a dream as an athlete at a higher level, and to get there, you got to have passion and focus, and that focus is on the now and what you got to do to achieve your dreams and your goals. So that said, the future isn't really looked at. And so when I was a Major League Baseball scout, I would tell the players if they had an interest, if one of the teams had an interest in them, make sure you got a college package or a plan for life afterwards, because the average baseball career is 4 years. And some of these kids sign at 18, the same at the Olympics. You're talking you were going in as a teenager. You're very young. You got the whole rest of your life in front of you. So there has to be a plan in place to help the athletes after the day and the sun is not there anymore. The other thing I would do is I'd bring baseball back. Thank you.
Well, if I was president of the IOC, first of all, I'll congratulate all the other presidents as way back as Coubertin, because I mean they've done a good job bringing us all the way, promoting the peace aspect of the Olympic Games. I mean, we've got Russian and America together, we've got Iran, wrestling, we've got table tennis, ping pong. You know, we've done all of that, and even up to today, we've got North and the South Koreans to come together. But as the new president of the IOC, I would want to bring what is called rehabilitation. I want to bring the human aspect into the Olympic Games. As much as we have everyone that is a bit angelic, we also have what we call fallen angels. We have people, we have those Olympians that you lost along the way. We have to be able to reach out and bring them back. We have to show how sports changes other people's life, how sports influences the day-to-day human activities that we have. You know, we have athletes, some of them got lost, some of them are in prison, you know, and then we forget about them. I mean, we don't even remember how good they were. You know, we have to bring the sports to the inner city and see how it changes kids in the neighborhood, how it changes our perception. That human side and that humanity, that rehabilitation, that getting that kid out from giving them a different part. You know, even the prison system of the United States, you know, works with people and bring them back. See, that's what we were lacking in that part of our Olympic movement. I mean, we're focusing more on the nations and the nations and the nations, but we're actually not working with the people. It's not just penance. It's rehabilitation and bringing back some of our fallen people. Thank you.
If I were president, I think for me, you know, when I won the gold medal in 1984, it was an amateur competition. And just so you know what I'm talking about, the difference. In 1992 in basketball, men's basketball, they allowed professional players to play. And the reason they did that mainly was because the USA did not want to lose any more basketball games in the Olympics, which, you know, we kind of invented the sport, I get that. But, you know, for me, it was very interesting because the Olympics come every 4 years. And for a basketball player, while it was still an amateur competition, if you weren't born in the right cycle or you weren't good enough at the right time, you basically lost your chance to be an Olympic athlete. And so, you know, if there was some way that they could take the political part out of the Olympics, what I mean by that is all the guys that played on and all the athletes that were on the 1980 U.S. Olympic team were not able to compete because of political reasons. So none of those athletes got to go compete in the Olympic Games. And so for us, and I wasn't on the 1980 team, but for those guys that did make that team, none of them were on my team because the ones that were good enough to make the team went on to play professionally, and the ones that weren't good enough to play professionally weren't good enough to make our team. So the window at that time was very small, and I just think, even though I'm fascinated by politics, as far as sport and competition, it needs to be left at the door.
If I become president of the IOC, I will sit for a minute in my office. I will laugh a little bit. And I think I will go immediately to Venezuela and clean the dirty polity and the corruption from the top of South America all the way down. And this is going to be bittersweet. Okay? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But I think that will be the main thing that I will do. My first priority. The second one, I will create, I believe, foundation, association in every country that we must help the Olympic athletes. After the Olympic Games, as probably said, a lot of the athletes, sometimes they leave the work, college, just to concentrate in their events. And then after the Olympic Games, it's like they don't care, the government don't care anymore about the athletes. And that probably will be my two top priorities.
If I was a president of the IOC, I would go with the more human terms of the spirit of the Olympics, and it would not just be concentrated, just at the Olympic Games because it gets all the publicity when it's there. But I would work on having a commission of athletes like us here from different countries that would help social problems around the planet. Because as Olympians and athletes, we have such an incredible voice of what we can do and what we can influence more people than anything else. And it's us athletes who are now retired from sport. we have the time and the energy to help out with climate change, poverty, all those types of things that, we could be helping on the social causes and would make a huge difference, and have sports and, educational and sporting opportunities in third world countries where they don't have as much, help out with, food production. I mean, there's so many things we could do that would make a huge difference, because it's Olympism, and we could make such a huge difference around the planet, and with the social problems that are getting larger all the time because we have more people all the time. But climate change is number one. You're looking at poverty, not enough food around the planet, water shortages in many places, things we could help out with. And corporations would want to donate to stuff like that because of the Olympic movement, with athletes really helping and running the show with that type of stuff.
Yeah, thank you everyone for those excellent ideas. I think what I would do just briefly is, if we look at how the Olympics are governed, it's by a group of slightly more than 100 people. In a world of almost 7 billion people, there's 100 largely, most of are Europeans. And I was a law professor who studied Olympic and international sports. I think a model more similar to what we have in the U.S. for professional sports, for at least the major league team sports, there's collective bargaining. So you've got a union that's selected that would represent the athletes, and something like that. You wouldn't have to call it a union, but just something where athletes have an equal voice with those who put on the games, and then probably all of these things that were talked about could be collectively bargained. You get an Olympic charter, a new one put together, and ways of implementing it. And I think it would be a much fairer system that'd be more equitable, and would lead to competitive balance. Because if we look at the medal distribution, it's only certain countries that have a realistic shot of winning in certain sports. You need to redistribute the resources. So in the interest of time, I think it's time to see if anyone from the audience would have any questions that they would like to ask of this really blue ribbon panel we're so fortunate to have here in the same room. So if you do, come out with the microphone.
Could I be president of the IOC one 30 seconds?
Absolutely. You've been re-elected, so you get this is your second term.
See how that, I need a second term. John mentioned the 1980 team, and I think that's very important. And I think that if I had the power, I would make it so that the next games would have a special category for the 1980 team, that those that missed the Olympics, and also 84, because there were the Russians didn't come in 84, etc. But those athletes that did not get to walk in opening ceremonies, they give them the opportunity to do so, are under the Olympic flag.
If we're waiting on questions, Matt and I had a nice conversation last night, and what is an Olympian? Everyone here says, oh, you're in the games. Matt and I had it was a good conversation. When are you an Olympian? Is that when you're across the finish line? Is that when you're sitting on the bench? Or is it walking in the opening ceremonies? Is it when your Olympic committee says qualified and sends you in? The IOC's definition is you have to take the field of play, and that's driven by economics, because they reimburse the Olympic committees for every athlete who takes the field of play. So if you got injured in the village, you marched in the opening ceremony, you got food poisoning, you didn't compete, you have a problem at home, you don't make it to the games, although you're entered, you're off that list. So there's a lot of legal challenges and definitions to even who is an Olympian. So things to think about when you go home. There's a lot of gray area. So, but there were some questions coming. I was filling in until they got those questions.
Oh, okay, good. We have some. I'll go ahead.
We got it?
Yeah, I'm up there.
Thanks for being here. I'm wondering if there is one thing that you've learned during your training or during your sports career that really has taken you farther in life, whether that's goal setting, endurance, anything like that. Is there one thing that really sticks out that has carried you further in life?
I I had to answer that question, that tough question yesterday to Mohawk middle schoolers, and because I was asking them what they define as success. And what I have found is most people work from life and then plan their retirement. I planned my retirement because just before I competed in the Olympics when I was 21, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I wanted to do when I retired. And the ethics and the planning that I have used in preparing for competition, writing down goals, those are the same things that I have used that carried me through life, and it has been the bedrock of everything I've been able to do. So I think for me, the goals, because since I ran both the 200 and 400 meters when I was in college and ran on both 4x1 and 4x4 relays, so we had to prepare and do different things. So that has transformed as one of the major life skills that I continue to employ up to today.
Same question, want to keep going?
I guess we have just one more minute because we have to wrap up at 9 o'clock.
Somebody else got a question?
One more question?
I don't need that. Barbara, you told me a story in the art gallery yesterday about walking into the stadium after looking at Liston's beautiful painting. Could you relay that story to everybody?
Sure. Liston, I don't need a microphone either. Liston had, some of you saw the painting that he did of the Coliseum arches and hands clapping. And I hadn't even talked to Liston about this, but when I saw it, it immediately hit me of the feeling. It was a feeling, it's that moment that you're talking about, Liston, that when you're going through the Coliseum, walkway, it's dark, and you see at the end of the tunnel this proverbial, light at the end of the tunnel, and you're walking towards it, and you get to the point, you kind of hear the muffled, roar and stuff like this, muffled. You get to, literally, it felt like there was the line here where the dark was here and the light was there, and the minute you stepped into the light, it was like, boom, that picture hit you just like that. That's what you heard. You heard the clapping and the roaring, and it just hit you, the sensation of, oh my God, your heart is pounding, and you look around and everyone's clapping for you. And I remember looking at this one woman clapping, and I swear to this day that I could hear her single clap. And it was for me because she was looking straight at me. And that was just a surreal moment. And that's what the Olympics is all about, is a combination of surreal moments. So thank you for asking the question.
Well, thanks so much to everyone. I guess this panel is adjourned, and